Everyone will get something small this year. We're keeping it simple and fair." My mom's tone was calm, almost rehearsed, as she stood in her kitchen that October afternoon. I had driven to her house in Milwaukee with my 8-year-old son, Ethan, who still believed in the magic of family gatherings. My sister Kelsey sat at the table with her 12-year-old twins, scrolling through their phones without looking up once. "That sounds reasonable," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "Ethan will be happy with anything." My mom smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She wore that familiar expression, the one she always had when she was planning something. It made me uneasy, though I could never explain why. I brushed it off. Christmas was still 2 months away, after all. My name is Morgan. I'm 35, a single mom, and a regional manager for a pharmaceutical distribution company. The job's demanding, but it pays well enough to provide for Ethan and still have a little left over. His father hasn't been around for 6 years. Fatherhood just wasn't part of his plan. So, it's been the two of us, figuring things out together. I've always taken pride in being independent. I don't ask my family for help, at least not financially. I make my own way, but I still show up for holidays, still try to maintain those connections, even when they feel more like obligations than genuine relationships. Kelsey finally looked up from her phone. "Mom, the kids really want the new phones for Christmas. You know, the ones with the good cameras." "We'll see," my mom replied, her tone neutral. I felt a small flicker of irritation. Kelsey's husband, Todd, worked in sales and made decent money. They weren't struggling. But my sister had always been good at asking for things, good at making people feel like they owed her something. "What about you, Ethan?" my mom asked, bending down to meet my son's eyes. "What do you want for Christmas?" Ethan shrugged, his small shoulders barely moving. "I don't know. Maybe some art supplies or books." My mom patted his head absently. "We'll figure something out." I watched her carefully, noting how quickly she moved away from him, how her attention immediately shifted back to Kelsey's twins. It wasn't the first time I'd noticed the difference in how she treated the kids. But I'd always told myself I was imagining it, being too sensitive. That evening, as Ethan and I drove home, he was quiet in the back seat. I glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "You okay, buddy?" I asked. "Yeah," he said softly. Then after a pause, "Mom, does Grandma like Sophie and Sam more than me?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Sophie and Sam were Kelsey's twins, spoiled in ways that made my teeth ache. My mom had always doted on them, excused their behavior, found reasons to give them more. "Of course not," I lied gently. "Grandma loves you very much." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't completely true. My mom had always favored Kelsey. Growing up, my sister got the bigger room, the nicer clothes, the more expensive gifts. I was the responsible one, the one who didn't need as much attention, the one who could figure things out on her own. Somehow, that pattern had carried over to our children. For years, I told myself it didn't matter. I'd built a good life for Ethan and me. We didn't need anyone's approval. But watching his reflection in the mirror, seeing that uncertainty in his eyes, something inside me cracked a little. 2 weeks later, my mom called about health insurance. She and my dad had been on my family plan for 3 years, ever since his company changed its benefits and their premiums skyrocketed. I added them without hesitation. "That's what family does, right?" "Just checking that everything's still good for next year," she said. "Of course. You and Dad are covered," I replied. "Kelsey too, right?" I had added my sister to the plan 18 months earlier when Todd lost his job for a while. "Yes," I said. "Thank you, honey. You're so good to us." I should have felt warm hearing that. Instead, it sounded hollow, like she was reading from a script. Still, I pushed the feeling aside and went back to focusing on work, on Ethan's school, on the quiet rhythm of our lives. November came and went. Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house went as usual. My dad carved the turkey while my mom hovered over Kelsey's twins, making sure they had extra helpings of everything they liked. Ethan sat quietly, eating his meal without complaint and without asking for anything special. "Morgan, you look tired," Kelsey said, her tone coated in false concern. "Are you getting enough sleep?" "I'm fine," I replied evenly. "You should really take better care of yourself." It must be hard doing everything alone. There it was, the subtle jab. The reminder that I was single, that I didn't have someone to share the load with, that somehow my life was lacking compared to hers. I didn't respond. I'd learned long ago that reacting to Kelsey's comments only fueled her need to one-up me. Still, I noted it mentally. Another small reminder that something in our family dynamic had been off for years. As December rolled in, my mom began calling more often. Small favors, minor errands, each conversation wrapped in that same hollow gratitude that always made my stomach twist. The first week of December brought an unexpected cold snap to Milwaukee. I was overwhelmed with work, managing inventory, handling shipping delays, and dealing with staffing problems across 3 distribution centers. Meanwhile, Ethan had started talking about Christmas, his excitement building despite my reminders that gifts would be simple this year. "Remember what Grandma said?" I told him one evening as we hung ornaments on our small tree. "Everyone's getting something small. Nothing fancy." "I know, Mom," he said softly, hanging the paper ornament he'd made back in 2nd grade. "I don't need anything big. I just want everyone to be together." His words made my chest tighten. At just 8 years old, he was already more emotionally grounded than most adults in our family. He had to be. Growing up without a father and with a mom who worked long hours, he'd learned early that life required patience and understanding. We had our own little traditions. Hot chocolate on Sunday mornings, reading together before bed, weekend trips to the art museum where he'd lose himself studying the paintings, asking questions about color and technique. He was a thoughtful, creative kid, and I had done everything I could to make sure he never saw his father's absence as a missing piece in his life. But family gatherings were different. At my parents' house, I often caught him watching the way my mom doted on Sophie and Sam, laughing at their jokes, giving in to their demands, while barely noticing when Ethan tried to show her a drawing or share something he'd learned at school. By mid-December, I stopped by my mom's place to drop off some insurance papers she needed to sign. Kelsey was already there, her twins in the living room playing video games on the massive television my parents had bought them last Christmas. "Morgan," my mom said as I handed her the papers. "Perfect timing. I was just showing Kelsey the gifts I picked out for the kids." She led me into her bedroom, where several wrapped packages sat neatly on the bed. 2 large boxes wrapped in expensive paper and 1 small, flat package covered in cheap drugstore wrap. "These 2 are for Sophie and Sam," she said proudly, pointing to the big boxes. "And that one's for Ethan." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Mom, you said everyone was getting something small." "These are small," she insisted. "Well, practical anyway. The twins need new phones. Their old ones are ancient." "They're barely a year old," I said, my voice tight. "Teenagers need good phones for school," Kelsey called out from the doorway. "You wouldn't understand since Ethan's still little." I looked down at the small package meant for my son. "What did you get, Ethan?" "Socks," my mom replied cheerfully. "Good quality ones." He's growing so fast, I thought something practical made sense. "Socks," I repeated quietly. "They're nice socks," she added quickly. "From that outdoor store, they were expensive." I just stared, waiting for her to realize how absurd that sounded. Phones for the twins, socks for Ethan, yet everyone supposedly got something small. "Don't make that face, Morgan," Kelsey said sharply. "Mom's on a fixed income. She can't buy big gifts for everyone." "Those phones cost at least $600 each," I said flatly. "Well, we pitched in," Kelsey admitted. The kids really needed them. The room suddenly felt like it was spinning. I'd spent years justifying my family's behavior, convincing myself that I was overreacting, that the favoritism wasn't that bad. But this time it was undeniable. It was cruel. "Ethan won't mind," my mom said, completely missing or ignoring the pain in my voice. "He's such an easy child, not demanding like some kids." "He's easy because I've raised him to be grateful," I said, trembling. "Not because he deserves less." "Nobody said he deserves less," Kelsey snapped. "You're being dramatic. It's just Christmas presents." I didn't respond. I simply left, driving home in a fog of anger and disbelief. When I walked in, Ethan was at his desk drawing. He looked up, smiling. "Mom, look what I made." "It's for Grandma, for Christmas." He held up a carefully drawn family portrait, all of us together, smiling. The detail was incredible for an 8-year-old. I could see how many hours he'd spent on it. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said. "Do you think she'll like it?" he asked, his eyes full of hope. I looked at him, at the kindness and love in his work, and something inside me shifted. I had shielded him from so much, tried to give him stability and love. But I hadn't protected him from this, the quiet cruelty of people who should have loved him most. "She'll love it," I said softly. Because what else could I say? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those gifts, the $600 phones versus a pack of socks. I thought about every time my mom dismissed Ethan's accomplishments while praising Sophie and Sam's smallest efforts. About how Kelsey's sarcastic remarks always went unchecked. Even though I was the one covering my parents on my health insurance, the one they called when help was needed. I had always been dependable, the one who made things work. And this was how that loyalty was repaid. By morning, I still hadn't slept, but I knew exactly what I was going to do. Christmas morning arrived with a fresh layer of snow blanketing Milwaukee's streets. Ethan woke up early, buzzing with excitement despite my reminders that gifts would be modest this year. We opened our presents together, just the two of us. I'd gotten him art supplies, some books he'd wanted, and a new winter coat he actually needed. He handed me a small box. Inside was a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Mom" in shaky, hand-painted letters. I held it, trying not to cry. "Do you like it?" he asked nervously. "I love it," I said, pulling him close. "It's perfect. We were supposed to be at my parents' house by noon." I dressed carefully, wearing my nicest sweater and making sure Ethan looked neat and tidy. He carried his wrapped portrait for Grandma, paper he'd decorated himself. The drive was quiet. Ethan hummed Christmas songs softly while I gripped the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. I'd spent the past week rehearsing this moment in my head, running through every possible outcome, trying to prepare for what was coming next. My parents' house was already crowded when we arrived. Kelsey's family had gotten there early, and Sophie and Sam were proudly showing off the new outfits they'd received that morning. My dad sat in his chair reading the newspaper, barely glancing up as we entered. "Merry Christmas," my mom called out, hurrying over to hug Kelsey's twins. She gave Ethan a quick pat on the head. "Go put your coats in the back room." I watched as Ethan carefully placed the wrapped portrait under the tree with the other presents. He'd written the tag himself, "To Grandma, Love Ethan," in his neat handwriting. Lunch was the usual chaos. My mom had made a ham, and Kelsey brought several side dishes, making sure everyone knew they came from an upscale gourmet store. The twins dominated the conversation, talking about their New Year's plans, sports teams, and school drama. Ethan ate quietly, trying a few times to join in, but each time Sophie or Sam talked over him. Eventually, he gave up and just focused on his plate. After lunch, it was time for gifts. My mom took on the role of Santa, handing out presents with great enthusiasm. She started with the twins. "These are very special," she said, handing them the large boxes I'd seen in her bedroom earlier. "I know you two have been wanting these." Sophie and Sam tore into the wrapping paper, squealing when they saw the phone boxes. They immediately began setting up their new devices, barely acknowledging anyone else. "Mom, this is too much," Kelsey said, though her tone carried more pride than protest. "Only the best for my grandchildren," my mom replied. Then she picked up a small, flat package. "And this is for Ethan." My son took it carefully, his face full of quiet anticipation. He opened it slowly, peeling back the paper rather than tearing it like the twins had. When he saw what was inside, his expression didn't change. But I noticed something fade in his eyes. Socks. A 3-pack of wool socks from an outdoor store. "Do you like them?" my mom asked. "They're very good quality. Should keep your feet warm." Ethan looked at the socks, then at his cousins with their new phones, and back at the socks again. "Thank you, Grandma," he said softly. "That's it?" Kelsey laughed. "Not even an excited thank you? Kids today don't appreciate practical gifts." "He said thank you," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. "Well, he could sound more grateful," my mom added. "Those socks weren't cheap." I watched my son clutch the package tightly, his small hands gripping the cardboard. He didn't cry. He didn't complain. He just sat there holding the socks. He sat there quietly, trying to make sense of why his cousins got phones while he got socks, even though Grandma had promised everyone would receive something small. "Mom?" Ethan whispered, leaning closer. "Did I do something wrong?" Those words shattered something inside me that I didn't even know could break. I pulled him close, wrapping my arm around him. "No, sweetheart," I whispered back. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not a single thing." Kelsey was busy helping her twins set up their phones. My mom was gushing over how thrilled they were, and my dad kept reading his newspaper like nothing unusual had happened. No one noticed that Ethan had gone completely silent. No one seemed to care. We stayed another hour, leaving right away would have caused a scene, and I was still trying to turn my anger into something I could manage. Ethan never mentioned the unfair gifts again. He thanked my mom for the socks 3 more times, each time his voice a little smaller, a little more resigned. When it came time to open the present he'd made, my mom barely looked at the portrait. "Oh, how nice," she said, setting it aside so she could clear wrapping paper from the table. "You're getting so good at drawing, honey." She placed it on a side table, wedged between some magazines and a stack of mail, then turned back to Sophie and Sam, who were taking selfies with their new phones. Ethan saw exactly where she'd put his drawing. His face stayed neutral, but I knew that look. I could see the hurt behind it. The drive home was silent. Once we got inside, Ethan went straight to his room. A few minutes later, I followed and found him sitting on his bed, still holding the socks in his hands. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked again, his voice breaking this time. I sat beside him and pulled him close. "No, baby. You did everything right. This isn't about you." "Then why did Sophie and Sam get phones and I got socks?" I had no answer that would make sense, nothing that could take away the pain. So I just held him as he cried quietly into my shoulder, mourning something he was too young to understand, but old enough to feel deeply. That night, after Ethan finally fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened my health insurance portal and stared at the family plan, covering my parents, my sister, her husband, and me. Then, slowly, I smiled and started typing. The morning after Christmas, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Ethan was still asleep, worn out from the emotional weight of the day before. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the table again, reviewing the insurance details. The plan covered 6 people: me, Ethan, my parents, Kelsey, and her husband Todd. It cost over $800 a month, deducted directly from my paycheck. I had never complained. 3 years ago, when my dad's company changed benefits and their premiums tripled, I added my parents without hesitation. Then, when Kelsey and Todd hit financial trouble 18 months ago, I added them too. Because that's what family does. That's what I was taught. You help, you support. You show up, except somehow it always felt one-sided. I picked up my phone and scrolled through photos from yesterday. There it was. Kelsey's social media post, Sophie and Sam holding their new phones, huge smiles on their faces, captioned, "Spoiled by the best grandma ever." These kids are so blessed. Blessed. The word made my stomach turn. I glanced back at the insurance portal. The next billing cycle started January 1st, 5 days away. Changes could be made until December 31st at midnight. Perfect timing, but I didn't act right away. I needed to think clearly, to be absolutely sure. This wasn't a decision to make in anger. It would have consequences, and I had to be ready for them. I spent the day with Ethan. We went to the movies, then grabbed pizza afterward. He seemed lighter, almost himself again, though he was unusually quiet during the film. At dinner, he nudged his pizza around the plate and finally asked, "Mom, why doesn't Grandma like me as much as Sophie and Sam?" I had dreaded this question. It's complicated, honey. Is it because I don't have a dad? The words hit me like a physical blow. What? No, Ethan. Sophie told me something that hit harder than I expected. She said her mom told her that Grandma feels sorry for me because I'm alone, that I'm probably harder to deal with since I don't have a husband to help discipline. My son, my hands tightened under the table. Kelsey had said that at my own sister, about my son, about me, and my mother apparently had either agreed or stayed silent. Sophie shouldn't have said that, I managed, keeping my tone even. And it's not true. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, I told Ethan. You're kind, smart, and creative. If people treat you differently, it's not about you. It's about their own problems. He looked at me with those big, serious eyes. Are we still going to Grandma's house? He asked. It was a fair question. I don't know yet, I admitted. But no matter what happens, we'll be okay. We always are. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I called my best friend, Jessica. We'd been close since college, and she knew my family history better than anyone. They did what? She burst out when I told her about Christmas. Are you kidding me? Phones and socks? I know it sounds petty when I say it out loud. I replied. It's not petty, Morgan, she said sharply. It's cruel. Deliberately cruel, especially to a child, I sighed. Ethan asked me today if Grandma doesn't like him because he doesn't have a dad. Jessica was silent for a moment before asking, So what are you going to do? I'm thinking of removing them from my insurance plan, I said quietly. My parents, Kelsey and Todd, all of them. They'll have to find their own coverage. It's not impossible. Just expensive, Jessica hesitated. You're serious about this? I pay over $800 a month to insure people who think my son deserves socks while their grandkids get phones. People who let my sister say hurtful things about us. People who have never once said a real thank you. Then do it, Jessica said firmly. They've taken advantage of you for years. Especially your mom. You've always been the reliable one, the one who doesn't complain, who handles everything. And this is how they repay you. I keep thinking I should talk to them first, I said. And say what? They know what they did. Your mom knew exactly what message she was sending when she bought those gifts. She just didn't think you'd ever stand up to her. She was right. My mother had counted on me swallowing my anger, being the bigger person, like always. Do it, Jessica repeated. And don't you dare feel guilty. By December 29th, I'd spent 2 days second-guessing myself. Was I overreacting? Was this too much? But every time I wavered, I remembered Ethan's face when he opened those socks, the confusion in his eyes when he asked if he'd done something wrong. That night at 9 p.m., I logged into my insurance account. My hands didn't shake as I navigated to the family plan section. One by one, I removed their names, my father, my mother, Kelsey, and Todd. 4 names. 4 clicks. The system asked me to confirm. I confirmed. It asked if I was sure. I was. The changes would take effect on January 1st. Within a week, they'd get letters notifying them their coverage had ended. Until then, I had about 48 hours of calm before the storm hit. I closed my laptop and felt something shift inside me. Not quite peace, but something close. A quiet certainty that I had finally stood up for myself and for my son. December 30th passed quietly. Ethan and I stayed home, organizing his new art supplies, reading, and just being together. My phone rang 3 times. Mom, Kelsey, and Mom again. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. By December 31st, I knew the letters had been mailed. They'd probably arrive by January 2nd or 3rd. I had that much time before everything blew up. That night, Ethan and I spent New Year's Eve watching movies and eating popcorn. At midnight, we banged pots and pans together like we always did, laughing as we welcomed the new year. For the first time in days, he was smiling again, truly happy. And for the first time, I felt like I'd finally done right by him. January 1st arrived with fresh snow and quiet streets. I made breakfast and tried not to think about what was coming. My phone rang 4 times that day. I didn't answer any of the calls. January 2nd, the calls became more frequent. 6 from my mom, 3 from Kelsey, and 2 from my dad, which was strange since he almost never called me directly. I let every call go to voicemail. That evening, I finally listened to the messages. My mom's first message. Morgan, honey, call me back when you get this. I need to ask you something about the insurance. Second message. Morgan, I got a letter today saying our coverage is ending. There must be some mistake. Can you call the insurance company and sort this out? Third message. Morgan, this isn't funny. Call me back right now. Kelsey's messages grew increasingly angry. Mom got a weird letter about insurance. Do you know anything about this? Then, Morgan, pick up your phone. Finally. Are you seriously ignoring us? What's wrong with you? My dad's message was weary. Morgan, your mother is very upset. Please call us back. I didn't call. Not yet. January 3rd began with my phone ringing at 7 a.m. I was already awake. Had been for an hour, waiting for this moment. It was my mom again. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello, Morgan. Her voice was sharp with panic. Finally. I've been trying to reach you for days. Did you get my messages? I did. Then why didn't you call back? We got letters saying our health insurance is being canceled. There must be a mistake. You need to call them and fix it. I poured myself some coffee, letting the silence linger. It's not a mistake, Mom. What? What are you talking about? I removed you, Dad, Kelsey, and Todd from my family plan. The coverage ended January 1st. The silence on the other end was heavy. You did what? I took you off my insurance. You'll need to find your own coverage now. Morgan, you can't do that. We need that insurance. Your father has doctor appointments scheduled. I have prescriptions that need refilling. You can't just cancel our coverage. I can, actually. It's my plan, and I've been paying for it for 3 years. But we're family. You can't just abandon us like this. That word, abandon, hit a nerve. Like you abandoned my son on Christmas when you gave his cousins $600 phones and gave him socks? Oh, for heaven's sake, is that what this is about? You're upset over Christmas presents? I'm upset because you promised everyone would get something small, and then you gave Sophie and Sam expensive gifts while my son got socks. I'm upset that you didn't think there was anything wrong with that. And I'm upset that when Ethan asked if he'd done something wrong, I didn't have a good answer. He's being dramatic. They're just presents. He's 8 years old, Mom, and he's not being dramatic. He asked if you don't like him because he doesn't have a father. Do you know why? Because Sophie told him that Kelsey said you feel sorry for me for being alone and that I'm harder to deal with because I don't have a husband to help discipline me. My mom went quiet. Kelsey shouldn't have said that, she finally replied. But she did. And apparently you agreed, or at least didn't correct her. So now Ethan, who's only 8, thinks his grandmother doesn't love him as much because his father left. Morgan, you're blowing this out of proportion, am I? Because from where I'm standing, my son got the message loud and clear that he's worth less than his cousins. And I'm done pretending that's okay. So you're going to punish us by taking away our health insurance? That's incredibly vindictive. I laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Vindictive? I've been paying for your insurance for 3 years. I added Kelsey and Todd when they needed help. I never asked for anything in return. But the moment I stopped giving, suddenly I'm vindictive? We needed that insurance. Then you should have treated my son with basic respect. You should have kept your promise about giving small gifts. You should have considered how your choices would impact a child. Morgan, please. You're being unreasonable. Can we just talk about this? We are talking about it. And the answer is no. Find your own insurance. We can't afford the premiums anymore. You know that. Then maybe you shouldn't have spent $1,200 on phones for the twins. That's different. How? Tell me how that's different. She couldn't, or wouldn't. Silence stretched between us before she finally said, Your father and I raised you better than this. We taught you about family loyalty. You taught me that family means showing up for people even when they don't deserve it, I replied. But you forgot to teach me that it's supposed to go both ways. I hung up before she could respond. My hands trembled, not from fear or regret, but from relief. Relief at finally saying what had needed to be said for years. The phone rang again almost immediately. Kelsey this time. What the hell is wrong with you? She shouted before I could even say hello. Mom just called me crying. You canceled our insurance? I removed you from my family plan. Yes. How could you do that? Todd and I need that coverage. We have 2 kids. You also have 2 incomes. You can manage your own insurance. It's going to cost us a fortune. We can't afford premiums right now. But you could afford $2,200 worth of phones? That's completely different. Everyone keeps saying that, but no one can explain how. Those were Christmas presents for your kids. And I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just not paying $800 a month to support people who think my son deserves socks while their kids get phones. God, you're such a martyr. You always have to make everything about you. This isn't about me, Kelsey. It's about Ethan. It's about how, on Christmas morning, when he opened his gift and saw what he got compared to his cousins, something inside him broke. And none of you noticed or cared? He's fine. Kids need to learn that life isn't fair. Oh, he's learning that, don't worry. He's learning that his grandmother and his aunt think he's worth less than his cousins. That family means something different to different people. That sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you hurt you in ways that can't be undone. You're being ridiculous. They're just presents. If they're just presents, then this is just insurance. Find your own. Mom said you're jealous because I have a husband and you don't. That you've always resented me for having a complete family. And there it was. The truth behind it all. That's what they said about me when I wasn't around. That's how they justified the unequal treatment. You know what, Kelsey? You're right. I am jealous. I'm jealous that your kids have a grandmother who adores them. that you've never had to question whether you matter to our parents, that you can take family support for granted while I've spent years earning scraps of affection. That's not true. It is true. And I'm done. I'm done pretending socks and phones are the same thing. I'm done paying $800 a month to people who think my son matters less than yours. You can't do this? I already did. Find your own insurance, Kelsey. Think of it as a lesson in independence. I hung up on her too. The phone rang 6 more times that day, but I didn't answer. I had said everything that needed saying. The next 2 weeks were as chaotic as I expected. My mom called daily, switching between guilt trips and anger. Kelsey texted constantly, sometimes begging, sometimes threatening. My dad called once, trying to be the calm voice, asking me to reconsider. I didn't. What I hadn't expected was how the rest of the family would react. My aunt, Mom's sister, called to tell me I was being cruel. My uncle sent an email about the importance of forgiveness. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions. Mom had created her own version of the story. According to her, I was being vindictive over Christmas gifts, punishing sick, elderly parents over a petty disagreement, and putting pride above family. What no one knew, because she didn't mention it, was that I'd been paying for their insurance for 3 years. That I'd helped Kelsey through her rough patch. That this petty disagreement was about a child made to feel worthless. Jessica told me to ignore them all. They don't know the full story, and they don't want to. Your mom's making herself the victim because it's easier than admitting she was wrong. She was right. But it still hurt. I had expected anger from my immediate family. I hadn't expected the extended family to join in, without ever asking for my side of the story. Work became my escape. I buried myself in a major project at the pharmaceutical company, reorganizing our distribution network across 3 states. It was challenging, intricate work that demanded my full focus. My boss, Patricia, who had always been fair and professional, noticed something was off. "Everything okay?" she asked one afternoon in late January. "Family stuff," I replied vaguely. She nodded, understanding that sometimes that's all that needs to be said. "Well, if you need anything, let me know. You're doing excellent work on this project, by the way." Her validation felt good. At least someone recognized what I brought to the table. At home, Ethan was starting to come out of his shell again. He was drawing more, talking more, seeming lighter somehow. One evening, he showed me a new picture he'd drawn. "It's us," he said proudly, holding up a drawing of just the 2 of us standing in front of our house. Our family. I looked at the picture, at the small details he'd included, at how happy we both looked. "It's perfect," I said. "Are we still going to see Grandma?" he asked. "I don't know. Do you want to?" He thought for a moment. "I don't think so. Not right now. She made me feel bad." "Then we won't go," I told him. "Not until you're ready, if ever." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his room. It hit me then. I'd been so focused on protecting him from pain that I hadn't considered he might actually feel relieved to let go of a situation that made him unhappy. By mid-February, something unexpected happened. I received a certified letter from my parents' attorney. It said I was being sued for financial abandonment and elder neglect. They claimed that by removing them from my insurance, I had violated my duty of care as their daughter and endangered their health. I stared at the letter in disbelief. My own parents were suing me because I stopped paying for their insurance. I immediately called a lawyer Patricia recommended, Gregory, a family law specialist. We met the next day. "Have you seen cases like this before?" I asked, sliding the letter across his desk. Gregory read it calmly, his face unreadable. "I've seen similar attempts," he said. "They rarely hold up. Adult children aren't legally required to provide health insurance for their parents unless there's a written agreement." "Do you have one?" "No," I said. "I just added them to my plan when they needed help." "Out of kindness?" "Yes." "And they're accusing you of elder neglect because you stopped?" "Apparently," Gregory leaned back in his chair. "Here's what we'll do. We'll respond formally, making it clear you had no legal obligation, that you voluntarily provided coverage for 3 years, and that they have other options. The case will likely be dismissed before it reaches court." "How much will this cost?" I asked. "My retainer is $2,000, he said. "It shouldn't go beyond that unless they push hard, which I doubt. Once they realize they don't have a case." $2,000. Money I'd have to spend because my parents chose to sue me instead of finding their own insurance. Do it, I said. Send the response. That evening, when I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a car I didn't recognize. Kelsey was sitting on my front steps. We need to talk, she said as I got out of my car. I don't think we do. Please, Morgan, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Ethan was still at his after-school art program and wouldn't be home for another hour. We stood in the kitchen. Neither of us sat. Mom and Dad are suing you, Kelsey said. I know. I got the letter. That's insane. I told them not to do it. Did you? Yes, this has gotten completely out of hand. I came to ask you to reconsider. Reconsider what exactly? Putting us back on your insurance before this goes further. So you want me to pay $800 a month and pretend nothing happened? I want us to be a family again. I laughed, sharp and bitter. We were never a family, Kelsey. Families don't play favorites. Families don't sue each other over insurance. Families don't say cruel things and expect them to be forgotten just because it's inconvenient to face the consequences. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for what I said. About you being alone, about Ethan being difficult. I shouldn't have said that, but you did. And you meant it. And Mom agreed with you. She didn't agree. She didn't disagree either. That's the problem. None of you ever stood up for Ethan or me. You've taken what I've given and acted like you were owed it. Well, you're not. And I'm done. Kelsey's eyes filled with tears. Please, Todd and I can't afford the premiums. We're drowning. You could have afforded it if you hadn't spent $200 on new phones. That was different. Stop saying that. It wasn't different. You made your choice. Phones over insurance. That's fine. Those are your kids, your priorities. But don't ask me to subsidize them. She left angry. And all I felt was tired. March arrived bringing warmer weather and a court date. Gregory had been right. The lawsuit was weak, but my parents were still moving forward, likely assuming I'd give in before it ever reached a hearing. What they didn't realize was how completely done I was with their manipulation. The day before the hearing, I got a call I didn't expect, from my dad, not my mom. That alone surprised me. Morgan, can we talk? Just you and me, I hesitated. What's left to talk about? Please. Just coffee, half an hour. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a cafe near my office, a neutral spot. My dad looked older than I remembered, worn down somehow. He ordered coffee and sat across from me, hands wrapped around his cup. Your mother doesn't know I'm here, he began. That seems to be a theme in this family, I said. People doing things behind each other's backs, he winced. I deserve that. Morgan, I want you to know I didn't agree with how Christmas went. I thought what happened with the gifts was wrong. Then why didn't you say something? He sighed. Because I've spent 40 years not saying anything when your mother favors Kelsey. It's always been easier to keep the peace than start a fight. And where did that get any of us? He nodded. You're right. I should have spoken up years ago. But I'm here now asking you to drop this before it goes to court. I'm not the one who filed the lawsuit. Dad, I know, but you could end it. Just put us back on your insurance. Why would I do that? Because we're family. I set my coffee down slowly. You keep using that word like it still means something. Family is supposed to protect each other. Family treats everyone equally. Family cares when a child is hurt. We do care about Ethan. You have a strange way of showing it. When was the last time you called to ask how he's doing? Or showed up to one of his school events? When was the last time you treated him like he mattered as much as Sophie or Sam? He said nothing. We both knew the answer. I'm not putting you back on my insurance, I said quietly. I'm done paying for people who treat my son like he's disposable. And I'm not backing down from this lawsuit. If you want to take me to court, fine. You'll lose and you'll pay your attorney fees. And afterward, you'll still need to find your own insurance, he sighed. Your mother will never forgive you for this. I've accepted that. Morgan, no, I'm done. I've spent my whole life trying to earn equal treatment in this family. I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, helped whenever I was needed, and it was never enough. Ethan deserved better than what you gave him on Christmas. He deserved to be seen and valued, not compared and dismissed. And I deserve better than being expected to support people who make us feel like we don't matter. I stood up. I'll see you in court tomorrow, Dad. He didn't try to stop me as I walked away. That evening, I sat with Ethan while he worked on a writing assignment about someone he admired. I glanced at his paper and froze. He'd written about me. My mom works really hard, his neat handwriting read. She always makes sure I have what I need. She's brave and strong and loves me no matter what. She teaches me it's okay to stand up for yourself. I felt tears sting my eyes. Ethan, this is beautiful. Is it good enough? He asked shyly. It's perfect. You're perfect, he smiled. A simple, genuine smile that reminded me exactly why I was doing this. Not for revenge. Not to win. But to show him that his worth wasn't negotiable, that he deserved to be defended, that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. The next morning, I dressed carefully for court. Gregory met me outside the courtroom, confident as ever. They'll try to make you seem cold and vindictive, he warned. Just stick to the facts. You have no legal duty to provide insurance, you did it voluntarily, and you stopped. That's it. What about the Christmas thing? I asked. We'll mention it if needed, but honestly, the judge won't care about family drama. This case is purely about legal obligation, and they don't have one. Inside the courtroom, I saw my parents sitting with their attorney, a polished man in an expensive suit who already looked irritated to be there. Kelsey sat in the gallery, along with a few other familiar relatives. They all looked at me like I was a stranger. The hearing began. My parents' attorney presented their case, claiming that I had abandoned my elderly parents who depended on my insurance, that I had acted out of spite and without notice, and that my actions had caused them emotional and financial distress. It felt surreal listening to myself being portrayed as some sort of villain. The attorney made it sound like I had taken away essential coverage from helpless, fragile people, instead of simply stopping payment for capable adults who could easily afford their own insurance. Then it was Gregory's turn. He stood and addressed the judge with calm professionalism. Your Honor, this case can be summarized quite simply, he began. The plaintiffs allege that the defendant has a legal obligation to provide them with health insurance. She does not, he explained the facts clearly. I was 35 years old, fully employed, and had no legal agreement requiring me to care for my parents. 3 years earlier, when they'd asked for help, I had voluntarily added them to my family insurance plan. Over that period, I had paid premiums totaling more than $28,000. I had even added my sister and brother-in-law, supporting 6 people under my plan. At no time, Gregory continued, did the defendant sign any document agreeing to provide coverage indefinitely? There was never any formal care arrangement. She acted out of kindness, not obligation. And when she chose to end that kindness, she was completely within her rights to do so. The judge turned to my parents' attorney. Does your client have any documentation showing a legal obligation? The attorney hesitated. No, Your Honor, but there's an implied duty of care between parent and child. In reverse? The judge asked. You're arguing that adult children have an implied obligation to insure their parents? When the parents are elderly and in need, yes, the attorney replied. The plaintiffs are in their early 60s, Gregory interjected. They're both employed part-time. They have access to marketplace insurance and Medicare options. They're not destitute or incapable of securing their own coverage. The judge looked at me. Ms. Morgan, do you have anything to add? I stood, my voice steady. Your Honor, I love my parents. I helped them because I wanted to. But over time, I realized that my help was taken for granted. My contributions became expected, not appreciated. And I saw my son being treated differently than his cousins. When I decided to remove my parents from my insurance, it wasn't out of anger. It was out of self-preservation and a need to protect my child from emotional harm. This is about Christmas presents? The judge asked, glancing at the file. It's about more than that, Your Honor, I said. But that incident made it clear that my family didn't value my son the same way they valued my sister's children. I had to decide whether to keep supporting people who treated my child as less important. The judge turned to my parents. Do you have anything to say? My mother stood, her voice trembling. She's my daughter. She's supposed to take care of us. We raised her, gave her everything, and this is how she repays us, by abandoning us when we need her most. I couldn't stay silent. You gave me everything, I said. You gave Kelsey everything. You gave me leftovers, criticism, and constant reminders that I was never good enough. I spent my life trying to earn your approval and never did. So yes, I stopped paying for your insurance because I finally realized I don't owe you anything just because you're my parents. Parents should earn their children's loyalty and love. You didn't earn mine. That's enough, the judge said, firmly but not unkindly. He looked weary, like he'd seen too many families fall apart in his courtroom. Here's my ruling, he continued. The plaintiffs have no legal standing. Adult children are not obligated to provide health insurance for their parents. The defendant acted within her rights when she removed them from her plan. Case dismissed. He banged his gavel and it was over. My parents' attorney looked frustrated. My mother cried quietly. My father remained expressionless. Kelsey got up and walked out without looking at me. Outside the courtroom, Gregory shook my hand. You handled yourself well, calm, composed. That judge sees a lot of family disputes, and yours was straightforward. Thank you for your help, I said. You're welcome, he replied. And for what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Sometimes families need firm boundaries. Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in months. I hadn't just won a court case, I'd won something far greater. I'd proved to myself that I could stand up to my family's manipulation and come out stronger. When I picked Ethan up from school, he climbed into the car with a big smile. How was your day, Mom? It was great, buddy. Really great. Can we get ice cream? Absolutely. We went to his favorite ice cream shop and I watched him enjoy a chocolate cone covered in sprinkles, completely unaware of the quiet battle I'd been fighting for him. And that was okay. He didn't need to know the details. All he needed to know was that someone would always be in his corner. That evening, my phone rang. It was Jessica. How'd it go? We won. Case dismissed. Yes. I knew you would. How do you feel? Honestly? Free. For the first time in years, I feel free. You should. You stood up for yourself and for Ethan. That takes courage. It shouldn't have taken me this long. Better late than never. I looked around my small home at the drawings Ethan had hung on the walls and the photos of just the two of us. Next, I said, we live our lives without the weight of people who never appreciated us. That sounds perfect. The months that followed were quieter than I'd expected. I had braced for more arguments or guilt trips, but none came. My parents and Kelsey found their own insurance, costly but manageable. The lawsuit had cost them both money and pride, and I think they finally realized I wouldn't be manipulated into reversing my decision. My aunt called again in April, this time with a different tone. Your mother told me everything, she said, about the Christmas gifts, the insurance payments, all of it. I'm sorry I judged you without knowing the facts. Thank you for saying that. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Your mom always favored Kelsey, and it wasn't fair to you growing up. I should have spoken up back then. It was validating to hear, even though it didn't change the past. Still, at least one person in my extended family finally understood. Work was going well, too. In May, Patricia promoted me to senior regional manager, with a substantial raise. You've been doing exceptional work, she said. You're organized, reliable, and handle pressure well. We need more people like you in leadership. The extra income allowed me to save more for Ethan's college fund and plan our first real vacation together. That summer, we went to Colorado, spent a week hiking and exploring mountain towns. Ethan took hundreds of photos and filled an entire sketchbook with drawings of mountains and wildlife. This is the best trip ever, he said one evening as we watched the sunset. From our cabin porch? Better than Christmas? I teased. He thought for a moment. Way better. Because here, it's just us, and we're happy. Out of the mouths of children. In late June, I received an unexpected message from my dad. Not a call, just a text. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself and Ethan. I should have done more to protect you both. I'm sorry. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was something. Thank you, I replied. That was the extent of our communication. Maybe one day we'd rebuild something, but I wasn't counting on it. And that was okay. Ethan started third grade in September, confident, happy, and surrounded by good friends who appreciated his creativity and kindness. In October, his teacher called to schedule a parent conference. I braced for bad news. That's usually what conferences mean, but instead, she smiled. I just wanted to tell you what a wonderful child you have. Ethan is thoughtful, hardworking, and incredibly talented artistically. He's also very emotionally mature for his age. You're doing an amazing job with him. I felt tears well up. Thank you. That means a lot. Has he always been this well-adjusted? She asked. He's had some challenges, I said carefully. Family stuff? But we work through things together. She nodded. Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. He's thriving. That evening, I told Ethan what his teacher had said. He grinned proudly. Do you think I could invite some friends over for my birthday? Of course. Who do you want to invite? He listed 5 names, kids from school and the neighborhood. No mention of Sophie or Sam. No mention of my parents or Kelsey. His November birthday party was loud, messy, and perfect. 8 kids running through the house, eating pizza and cake, playing games. I watched Ethan laughing with his friends and realized this is what childhood should look like. Joy without judgment, love without comparison. Christmas came again, our second one without the extended family. Ethan and I had created our own traditions, decorating the tree with hot chocolate in hand, watching old movies, and volunteering at the local shelter on Christmas Eve. On Christmas morning, Ethan opened his presents with pure excitement, art supplies, books, new clothes, and a tablet for his digital art. Nothing extravagant, but each gift chosen with love and intention. "This is perfect, Mom," he said, hugging me tightly. "Thank you. You're welcome, sweetheart. Do you miss them?" he asked quietly. "Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Kelsey?" I thought about it honestly. Sometimes I miss the idea of them, the family I wished we could be. But I don't miss how they made us feel. "Me neither," he said. "I like it better this way. Just us." "Just us," I agreed. Later that day, Jessica came over for dinner with a few of her colleagues who had become close friends. We ate too much, laughed endlessly, and no one compared or criticized anyone else. There was no competition, no judgment, just people who genuinely cared for one another, enjoying each other's company. As I cleaned up that night, with Ethan already asleep upstairs, I reflected on everything that had happened over the past year. The pain, the anger, and the courage it took to draw boundaries. The lawsuit, the judgment, and ultimately the freedom that came from standing firm. I thought about those socks, still tucked in Ethan's drawer, a small reminder of the moment everything shifted. Over the next year, my parents and Kelsey dealt with the consequences of their actions. The lawsuit cost them thousands in legal fees they couldn't recover. Their insurance premiums tripled compared to what they paid under my plan, draining the savings they had intended for retirement. Kelsey and Todd's marriage began to crack under financial strain, leading to endless arguments about money. My mother's reputation within the extended family faltered as the truth about the Christmas gifts and insurance came to light. People stopped taking her side, stopped excusing her favoritism. Sophie and Sam, now teenagers, began asking uncomfortable questions about why they no longer saw their cousin. Those questions forced Kelsey to face her part in the family rift. My father, perhaps burdened by years of quiet complicity, grew increasingly distant. They had counted on me always being the dependable one, the one who kept the peace, no matter the cost. But they lost that bet, and the consequences were greater than they ever expected. As for Ethan and me, we built a life surrounded by people who truly valued us, who showed up because they wanted to, not because they had to. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from those who refuse to recognize your worth. And when I look back at that Christmas morning, at those socks that started it all, I feel no regret. Standing up for my son, for myself, for the basic respect we both deserved. That wasn't revenge. It was simply refusing to accept less than we were worth. And that made all the difference.